Alright guys, welcome back to the channel and welcome to a different style video today. I thought we'd do a longer podcast type episode today. Lots of breaking news, lots of fights that we've just seen taking place, and lots of fights to look forward to as well. So we're going to discuss it all here. We're going to start with the breaking news, but if you all could first, head down the bottom there, like the video, subscribe to the channel. We're trying to hit 1K. I really want to hit that in the next few months. So if you could all first, hit that subscribe button. It helps a lot. And at the very end of the video, please do tell me if you prefer this podcast type episode or you prefer the 10 to 15 minute videos every sort of day. I do want to know which way you prefer it done. If this podcast is something that you guys really like and we can get it going, you know, I wouldn't be opposed to moving it to a live platform as well. So you just got to let me know. Let's start with the breaking news. Now, Callum Smith's April 18th date with David Morrell has been cancelled. This is due to an undisclosed injury caused in training to Callum Smith. So very unfortunate for Callum Smith. It is difficult. Callum Smith, I mean, we haven't seen him since he took on Joshua Buatsi in February of 2025. It's now April of 2026. An undisclosed injury could be absolutely anything. We could not see him for the rest of this year. So I hope that's not the case. I hope it's just a short-term injury and they can turn this around and we see David Morrell versus Callum Smith in the next few months, because this fight would have been fireworks. I have no doubt about it. After what I saw with Callum Smith and Joshua Buatsi, these two bring the action. I know this would have been a great fight, but at 35 years of age, it's going to be 12, 15, 16, 18, however long months between fights. It's not a great look, and for Callum Smith, you really want to see him back in the ring. Now, this fight card is still going to take place same day, same location, Liverpool M&S Bank Arena, but Ben Whittaker's fight against Brian Suarez will now be headlining the event, so could be a hard sell. Obviously, Callum Smith being the Scouser would have packed that stadium out with him off the card, and Ben Whittaker from Birmingham, I'm not sure how it sells. I'm not really sure what we think of his opponent either. I mean, Suarez, he's got 21 wins, 20 knockouts. He's also got 4 losses, 3 of those by knockouts, including a round 1 loss to Albert Ramirez and a late loss to Lyndon Arthur. So, for Ben Whittaker, he's now, 27, 28 years of age. At what point do we take this Olympian with 10-odd fights now to a bigger stage? Because, in my opinion, Brian Suarez, although he's an improvement of the last opponent, he's still not a massive improvement. And when I look at him and I see how many fights he's now had at a professional level and the level of opponent he's facing, considering his amateur background, I think we need to just see a step up. I don't like rushing fighters into fights, but I also don't like taking 20 fights when it's not necessary. I mean, you look at Andy Cruz and, you know, within 8-odd fights, he's in a world title fight. Yes, he lost that fight, but you can't tell me he wasn't very competitive in that fight. So, and look, I'm not even saying that he needs to be in there with a Bivol or a Beterbiev, but just to step up from these guys that he's versing. That would be my opinion. I think he just needs a push forward. Let's start seeing this guy really tested. All right, it can be British level, it can be European level, but these guys here, they're not the level. O'Shaquie Foster to defend his WBC super featherweight title against Ray Ford. This to take place May 30th in Houston, Texas. That's a difficult fight. Ray Ford hasn't fought since beating Abraham Nova halfway through last year. O'Shaquie Foster's coming off, you know what, arguably his best fight of his career. I thought it was his best performance. He completely shut out Stephen Fulton and dominated him over the course of that fight. It wasn't even close. And Stephen Fulton is a very good fighter. That fight was, for me, a 50-50 going into it. And the way that Foster dispatched of him, the way that he boxed technically, outstanding. That is a difficult fight for Ray Ford. And, you know, if you're looking at it right now, I'm picking Foster early doors. I think that performance over Stephen Fulton is, you know, maybe hyped me up a little bit too much, but it was an unbelievable performance. Abdullah Mason is set to defend his WBO lightweight title against Joe Cordina. They are looking at a June date in Cleveland. That fight will be good. Abdullah Mason, I mean, what he gets from that win over Sam Noakes, like, not only did he become champion, youngest champion, but the performance, the experience, everything that he'll gain from that fight, I can't wait to see him put that in action, because that was an unbelievable fight. First and foremost, him versus Sam Noakes was one of the fights of the year last year, if not the fight of the year last year. And Joe Cordina, we know he brings the action. I didn't think he was outstanding in his last fight. and he's up against it. Abdullah Mason, I mean, he's up against an experienced opponent in Joe Gordina, but if he performs the same as he did against Sam Noakes, if not better, you become 10% better when you become champion. He's a scary, scary prospect, and at such a young age, I can't wait to see what the next few years hold for Abdullah Mason. Keyshawn Davis will headline Top Rank's first DAZN show when he rematches Nahir Albright May 16th in Virginia. First fight back in October of 2023. Keyshawn winning a unanimous decision victory. That fight being overturned to a no contest because of weed in Keyshawn Davis's system. Now, look, in terms of that whole scenario and where I stand on it, I have no real objections with a guy having, use of weed. I don't really care. It doesn't bother me. I have really no opinion on it. My sort of thought process in that argument, though, is although weed isn't illegal in most states, and although he's got every right to, if he wants to use it, and it probably shouldn't be a banned substance, I don't really think it's what a top athlete, especially in boxing, should be doing in and around Steve's fight. If I'm being honest, because although it's not something that's increasing his performance, so it's not really cheating, but is it, decreasing your performance? Is it making you worse? Is it making you the same? I don't know what impacts that would have on your ability to box at a high level. All right, that would be my question of it. And to be using any type of drug in and around a boxing event when you know what commissions do and are like sometimes, I think I'd just prefer to see you not do it at all, although I have no objections with the fact that you were doing it. In a personal way, in terms of professional game, I think it'd just be better for you and everything around the fight if you just didn't do it. I think you'd perform better anyway. I'm not a medical expert, but for me, I think you'd perform better. And for Keyshawn Davis, there's been a lot of sort of things going on around him. I mean, we had that incident. We had the one against Edward de los Santos. I think he's sort of shifted now, and I don't think this would ever become a problem now. I think there is a bit of a mentality shift. I think working in the camp that he's working in now, the discipline that he would be shown by the people he's working with will sort of pass that out. So I don't think it'll be a problem in the future, but I think using it, you're sort of not gaining anything from doing it, and you're probably causing yourself more problems and more hassles than you need to. In terms of this fight, you're backing Keyshawn Davis to win it again. You would. Whether it goes to a decision or a knockout is up to you. I'd probably say a decision. Keyshawn Davis is, for me, him and Shakur Stevenson are two of the top fighters in the world right now. And Keyshawn Davis, I don't think it'll be very long before we're talking about him as a top 10, top 8, top 5 pound for pound. It could take a few years, but for me, he's got all the right stuff to be that type of fighter. And I do believe he beats Nahir Albright. The method is probably where I'm a bit stuck. I don't necessarily see him beating Nahir Albright quickly. Whether he can get a late stoppage like he did against Jermaine Ortiz, or whether it goes to a decision, I'm not sure. But I probably have no reservations in saying that Keyshawn Davis takes the dub. All right, let's do a review of the weekend's action. And like I said, there was a lot of weekend action. Pat Brown versus Vasyl Ducar, a round 8 TKO victory for Pat Brown. He dropped him 3 times in that fight. Progresses to 6 victories, 6 knockouts. Pat Brown's almost getting similar to what I say about Ben Whittaker. Let's do the step up. Let's see this guy against top guys. I don't think it'll be long before we see Pat Brown in there with top cruiserweights. Don't get me wrong. I think he's very, very close. I actually think he'd probably be closer than Ben Whittaker because of the way that they're being managed. But I think Pat Brown's got all the right stuff. That fight was, I think, harder than what he expected. Vasyl Ducar was, a hardy opponent. He just didn't want to go down, and it ended up being the ref's decision to stop the fight because Vasyl Ducar would have continued in that fight. But I was good. I think Pat Brown getting that 8 rounds in him was very beneficial for him. Got to try a few things, got to, experience a bit of a longer fight. And for me, the key in that victory was the body shots. I thought when he started ripping to the body, the guard came down, he started to crumble, and that's when the victory came. William Crawler stops Glenn Byrne in the 7th round after being dropped 4 times. 3 times in round 2 and once in round 5. Lots and lots and lots of question marks about the officiating in that fight, and Is it the right decision? Is it the wrong decision? Ultimately, you get dropped 3 times in a round. You probably should be stopping the fight. But then I guess anybody that sort of says anything against the referee would be then said, well, didn't the guy that got dropped 3 times win the fight? So, didn't the right decision get made? But at the same time, you got to protect the fighter, So it's a weird one. You probably say, you get dropped 3 times in round 2. That should have been it. But at the same time, William Crawler came out late and landed a big left hand and stopped the other guy in the 8th round. So what you make of a decision in that is really up to you. Like I said, I'm sort of torn between the two things. You've got to protect the fighters from themselves, all right? Because it's a very dangerous sport. If you compare that one, what happened in round 2 to what happened in the main event when the ref stopped that fight, you'd say William Crawler was in a hole bigger than what Vasil Ducar was when that fight got stopped. So if you're comparing referee and performances, two very different ends of a scale. Viddal Riley defeats Mateus Masternak by a commanding unanimous decision victory. He now becomes 7th by the ring, and I think he's 7th by IBF, but I wouldn't be surprised if that is going up because he just beat Mateus Masternak, who is number 4. So you'd almost say those two switch places. Viddal Riley most likely will be, in the top 5 of the IBF. Chris Billam-Smith is number 3. Number 2 and number 1 are vacant, and Jai Patai has just been stripped of his title. Is Viddal Riley on the borderline of fighting for a world title against Chris Billam-Smith for the IBF title? I think so. If that fight got announced next week, it wouldn't surprise me at all. Am I saying Viddal Riley's ready for it? I'm not sure. Chris Billam-Smith is a very, very tough fight. All right, not just because of how experienced he is, but the way he likes to fight. It will be a tough, gritty, hard fight. Viddal Riley's a bit weird. For me, Viddal Riley for a long time was just classed as almost a YouTuber. I always sort of saw him as a boxer that just kept suffering injuries and, worked with YouTubers. So I'm a big fan of Viddal Riley, and I really want to see him become a world champion because I am a huge fan of him. That fight there on the weekend, although I probably would have liked to have seen him get Masternak out of there, it was great rounds against a hardened opponent, all right, a veteran opponent, and he showed that he can not only win, but he can dominate a experienced fighter like that. That is a tough thing to do, and Viddal Riley's just getting better and better every time we see him. The win over Chev Clark was good. That was British level. Step up, beats a guy at European level. It's world level next. Whether he can win it is a different story, but in terms of being competitive and ready for it, I think he is. Obviously, there's a lot of issues that have to be worked out in that IBF with Jai Patai and everything else. For me, Jai Patai should never have been stripped, and the right decision would be Jai Patai versus CBS for the vacant title. But with Zuffer and everything else that's going around, you never know what's going to happen. And Viddal Riley, if there is a title fight happening and Jai's not in it, I think it's got to be Viddal and CBS. Deontay Wilder defeats Derek Chisora by split decision. I think the right guy won it on the night. I know the right guy won it on the night. I think he outworked Chisora. He hurt Chisora more. He dropped Chisora twice. There was no doubt for me Deontay Wilder won that fight. It wasn't, lopsided. It was a very, very competitive fight. It was one of the best fights. It was just pure entertainment. It was an instant classic. It was a great way to send Derek Chisora off. Of course, he would have wanted the win. Didn't come. But Deontay Wilder, you win a fight and guess what? It's what's next. And at 40 years of age, Deontay Wilder, he's not Deontay Wilder of 30 years of age, but he's probably a better Deontay Wilder than we've seen since the Fury trilogy. That would be what I say. He looked better in that fight than he did against Talanius. He looked better than he did against Herndon. He probably looked better than he did against Zhang and Parker. I think that shot that he took in the 4th round, if he ate that in one of those fights against Parker or Zhang, he's not getting up from it. I think it showed where he's at in his career mentally and physically, and I think he can compete against an Anthony Joshua. I think he can compete against a Tyson Fury. I don't think he can compete against a Wardley, a Kabayel, and Usyk. But in terms of, those three, Fury, AJ, and Wilder, all three guys very similar places in their career, tail enders. They're fighting for, the last bit of money, the last bit of fame, the last bit of, this is what I do because this is what I love. But ultimately, we don't have any high aspirations for them. They have a few big fights, sell out a few arenas, put on some great nights. Yeah, I can see Deontay Wilder in each and every one of those fights, and I think the one against Anthony Joshua, although we would have liked to have seen it 10 years ago, all right, I still think it does numbers. I still think it's an entertaining fight. I still think both guys could potentially win, and we haven't seen Anthony Joshua for a long time. You know, he's coming off the back of a devastating defeat as well as a devastating personal issue. So what type of AJ we get back, we're not sure. Deontay Wilder looks like he might be returning, although there's some weird things going on about him in press conferences, in talks, saying I love you to Derek Chisora before smacking him. There's a lot of weirdness going on, but I still want to see that fight. It still intrigues me. I still think it's an entertaining fight. Tim Tszyu got back to winning ways, defeating Dennis Nerja in a shutout 100-88 victory. This is now back-to-back victories for him following that Sebastian Fundora defeat. Nerja was deducted 1 point and downed once in the fight. That's how we get 100-88. And ultimately, it was a sparring session. Dennis Nerja was a walking punching bag for about 10 rounds, and Tim Tszyu dominated him. Probably should have got him out of there. That would be my official view of that fight. I wasn't sure when I watched it the first time, watched it back again. That's what I saw. Dennis Nerja offered nothing in that fight. Tim Tszyu dominated him. Why did Tim Tszyu not get him out of there? Spence next. That's ultimately what the talking point is. It's a massive multi-million-dollar deal in Dallas, Texas. 80,000 people at AT&T against Errol Spence. It's odd. I'm not convinced with Tim Tszyu yet. I'm not. Of course, I'm a big supporter of him. I have been for a lot of years, and I will always be a supporter of Tim Tszyu, all right? Do I think this is a Tim Tszyu that wins a world title? I'm not sure, guys. The fact that he couldn't get rid of Velasquez and he couldn't get rid of Nerja, went 20 rounds with him, although he dominated them and they didn't offer anything, you probably still say, why didn't you get rid of one of them? Why didn't you drop them a few times? Why is it Tim Tszyu still not looking quite like Tim Tszyu? Why does he eat so many punches, even with these tactical changes, to be a more careful, composed fighter? I'm not sure, and I don't have the answers to these, but I think his next fight is really heavily reliant on Errol Spence. I think we talk about what we think of Tim Tszyu, but what do we think of Errol Spence? It's been a very long time since we saw him take on Terence Bud Crawford. A very long time. And he wasn't competitive in that fight. He got destroyed. That was so one-sided, that fight. It's unbelievable. So what we can expect from Errol Spence in this fight, I think, is a talking point as well. And in terms of, do I think that fight's competitive? I think Errol Spence of 2019, 2020 sort of era, you know, if not a few years before, if not a few years after. Yeah, that is a highly, highly competitive fight, and I think it can go either way. If we see an Errol Spence that we saw similar to what Keith Thurman threw up, all right, Keith Thurman was out of the ring for a very long time, was nowhere near competitive, was getting on in age, and got demolished by Sebastian Fundora. Not the same type of level of opponent, granted. But in terms of a personal performance, you can see Errol Spence throwing up a performance like that. I don't think we'll ever see an Errol Spence like we did before Bud, but a fraction of that, 60 or 70% of that sort of Errol Spence is still a highly competitive fight against Tim Tszyu. At least we've seen Tim Tszyu have 2 runouts. We've seen Tim Tszyu fight. We know what Tim Tszyu's offering right now in his career. We have no idea what Errol Spence is. Fascinating, yes. Intriguing, yes. But ultimately could pose for an awful, terrible night of action. We don't know. Could be an excellent night of action. And unfortunately, guys, I don't have the answer for you. We can all have our opinions. I am more hopeful than I am certain. I'm hopeful that Errol Spence turns up. I'm hopeful Tim Tszyu turns up. And I'm hopeful that it's an excellent fight. But fortunately, there's no guarantees. There's no guarantees in the Tim Tszyu performances we've seen. And Errol Spence has been missing for ages. You know, you wouldn't be surprised if that fight just doesn't even happen. You know, it wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility. Sam Goodman defeated Rodrigo Ruiz by unanimous decision. He places now number 2 by the ring in super bantamweight. Akhmadaliev is number 1. Junto is number 3. He also goes to number 2 in the IBF, places under Ryosuke Nishida. Exciting times for Sam Goodman. I thought he showed a lot of good stuff in that fight against Ruiz. There were a few question marks If we start with the question marks, for me, the chin looks like a problem to me. All right, once again, he got a cut opened up on the eye. That's a problem. All right, that's what stopped the Inoue fight from happening. But, second round, third round, eats a big left hook. One that he's, walking backwards. He's going backwards. It's only a glancing shot on the chin, and it still wobbles the guy. That's problematic because, if you're stepping in and eating that shot, you probably get knocked out. And Rodrigo Ruiz, although a hard hitter, probably doesn't hit anywhere near as hard as the guy you're chasing in Naoya Inoue. So, some question marks. I thought he was excellent at range. I thought he was even better in the pocket. It was a tight, hard, contested fight. The scorecards were a little bit all over the place, but I can actually see why, because I actually thought it was quite, dominant, not by a mile, but still Sam Goodman by quite a few rounds. And I've had discussions with people that thought it was a little bit closer than that. So I had no problems with the scorecard. It was a competitive fight. I just thought Sam Goodman did the better work. And beat Ruiz, especially later on in the fight. He won majority of the rounds, although Ruiz probably snatched the earlier few. So it's how you score that middle. And for me, I thought Sam Goodman did the better work. There might be a little bit of Australian bias in that, yeah, but I don't think there was a cause for Ruiz to win that fight. I don't think there was a case for him to have become the victor. So ultimately, it really doesn't matter how we individually score the fight, as long as the right guy won. And number 2 by the IBF, number 2 by the ring. Very, very close to an Inoue fight if Inoue stays in this division. I expect Inoue to beat Nakatani off what I saw Nakatani do against Hernandez. If they're sticking around in this division, I want to see those fights still. I want to see those fights, although I'm still probably saying that Inoue and Junto beat Sam Goodman. I still believe Sam Goodman can be more than competitive in those fights. I think there's some stuff that he's still got to work on, but I'm intrigued by those fights. It's a shame that we didn't get to see him earlier, but if anything, he's probably a better fighter now after facing Nick Ball, having that time at featherweight, dropping back down, having this fight. He'll be a better fighter anyway against Inoue or against Junto or against any of these guys, even if they run that Nishida fight first and say, let's see who actually is number 1. All right, let's talk about the women's fights. There was a lot of women's fights going on over the weekend. Lauren Price overcomes a cut to her mouth and eye to defeat Stephanie Pinheiro by a wide unanimous decision and defend her WBA, IBF, and WBC welterweight belts. And then did a face-off with Clarissa Shields, pardon me. You know what? It was a good win, a good opponent. Stephanie Pinheiro really brought it. So for Lauren Price to win by such a wide amount, it was a very good victory. But she looked, for me, quite undersized for Clarissa Shields. And I'm not certain I want to see that fight immediately. I just don't believe Lauren Price showed me anything in that fight to really command me to say she goes and beats Clarissa Shields. And when you look at the size difference, less faith even more. So for me, I think Lauren Price just sort of work your way up to that. 1-2 more fights. Have a fight at super welterweight. Have a bit of a feeling out at middleweight. Let's just... Not yet. For me, not yet. Chantel Cameron gets a commanding unanimous decision victory over Michaela Kostakova, dropping 1 round on 2 scorecards. Everything else was her way. She defends her super welterweight title and then faces off with Michaela Mayer. Now, ultimately, if I was making the rules, I would have Chantel Cameron take on Lauren Price and I would have Michaela Mayer take on Clarissa Shields. I think those are the better fights. I think Michaela Mayer, her height, she can put on the size against Clarissa Shields. 2 Americans, I think that fight is unbelievable action, and that's the fight I would want to see. It's the fight I was calling for last Clarissa Shields beat Franchon Cruz-Dezern. That's the one for me. I would prefer that right now. And Michaela Mayer, another one that's quite tall compared to Chantel Cameron. Chantel Cameron, a bit bulkier, so it outweighs it in a way. But Michaela Mayer, she's if anybody's the natural super welterweight over the course of their career, it's Chantel Cameron. Michaela Mayer's been more welterweight, but now moving up. So, look, I'm still happy to see Michaela Mayer over Chantel Cameron, but I prefer to see Michaela Mayer take on the big one in Clarissa Shields. Ellie Skodny becomes the youngest British undisputed champion in the 4-belt era after beating Mayeli Flores by unanimous decision, very wide again. Sky Nicholson faces Mariah Turner April 29th. She's the WBC mandatory, so as long as she wins that fight, we've got to say it. Scotty versus Sky Nicholson. Look, Scotty dominated Maëlie Flores. I knew she would. There was no question. The question is, does Ellie Scotty stay in this division and take on Sky Nicholson like she should? Or does she move up like she said that she might? That's the biggest question. I think she needs to stay around for one more fight. That Sky versus Scotty fight is unbelievable. It's probably going to happen in Britain, which is a bit of a shame. I'd love to see it here in Australia. But yeah, I think Sky Nicholson versus Ellie Scotty for Undisputed. Oz versus a Brit. It's got everything for me. So that's the fight that needs to happen. Caroline Dubois defeats Terry Harper, dropping her in the 6th round and securing a wide unanimous decision victory. Look, she dominated Terry Harper, but I also said previous to the fight happening that I expect Caroline Dubois to stop Terry Harper. I think Terry Harper, after what we saw Baumgardner do and what we saw Sandy Ryan do, if you want to be that top level, in my opinion, you beat Terry Harper. I'm a fan of Terry Harper. Don't get me wrong. I'm not dissing her. I actually quite like her. I think she's very entertaining. She's a good fighter. But for Caroline Dubois, I actually expected her, with the power that she possesses, with the size, that she'd stop Terry Harper, and she didn't. Credit to Terry Harper. You know, she was hardened in that fight. She wouldn't go down. But Caroline Dubois, I expected you to find a way. I expected her to find a way to put her away, and she didn't. Alicia Baumgardner next. That's always the conversation when it comes to Caroline Dubois. We know they have a lot of beef. They talk about it a lot. Look, Caroline Dubois, if you really believe that you're on that level, sign that contract. Alicia Baumgardner, if you truly believe you're that much better than her, sign the contract. It's that easy. You're both talking all sorts of smack online. There's no excuses. One of you sign the contract. We'll figure out whether the other one actually truly wants that fight or not. Who do I see winning that fight? For me, it's Baumgardner. I haven't seen enough from Dubois. I think Dubois in these last 2 fights, not being able to find, that finish. I think she needs a little bit more before she actually beats Baumgardner. But Baumgardner, although she's been dominant in her last few victories, she's another one that I'm thinking, why have you not been able to close the show? Why have you not been able to find that finish? And it's a competitive fight. It's a high-level fight. It's a very skillful fight. But I'm backing Alicia Baumgardner early doors. I just think she's got the experience and she is overall the better fighter. Caroline Dubois in 2 years, maybe. But right now, this second, Baumgardner. All right, let's talk about the Zuffa Boxing 5 card. I'm still not sold on this Zuffa Boxing thing. I think a lot of in-house fights, a lot of similar names, a lot of similar performances, and although they say every fight's a 50-50 fight and we only pick entertaining fighters, it's never a guarantee, and I think Zuffa Boxing 05 was a clear example of that, because although the matchups were supposed to be good, ultimately none of the fights for me delivered. They were all average, okay fights. There was nothing spectacular. Obviously, there was that mad knockout in one of the earlier fights, which is going to probably go for knockout of the year, smacks him, and he ends up, face planting on the floor, which is always a good look for a knockout, but not a good look if you're the fighter doing the face planting. There's a few fights here I want to talk about. Andres Cortez versus Eridson Garcia. Cortez just wins the decision. Not the most entertaining fight, not the greatest fight of all time. Hazat Hovhannissian versus Eduardo Baez. That was the fight that was the most interesting, because we had Hovhannissian hurt his arm in the 1st or 2nd round. Couldn't throw his left arm for basically the whole entire fight. And Eduardo Baez failed to win the fight. Hovhannissian actually outpointed him in the end and won the fight, outworked him the later rounds and got the decision. And all credit to Hovhannissian. I don't know what was wrong with his arm. It was a good win, but for Eduardo Baez, I mean, how have you let that one slip through your hands? It is poor, but there's not a lot to talk about in the Zuffa Boxing, so I'm not going to go on for too long. It was a poor to average night of boxing. Nothing spectacular apart from that one unbelievable knockout, which if you haven't seen, I'll try and play it on the screen. It's brutal, man. It's unbelievable. But let's do a look ahead to this weekend's action. All right, guys, a big weekend of boxing to come up. We got Justice Huni versus Frazier Clark, Jamie TKB versus Richard Riakporte, Conor Benn versus Regis Prograis, and Tyson Fury versus Arslanbek Makhmudov. I'm going to try and get a watch-along going. No guarantees. This fight, I believe, or this fight card, I believe, starts at 2 or 3 a.m. for me. So we're going to see. No guarantees. I will try, though. I really want to watch that Justice Huni fight live, and I want to watch the Conor Benn fight live. It is going to be an entertaining weekend of boxing. It is. I think Justice Huni versus Frazier Clark, two guys that are very similar places in their career. almost the same amount of fights, a few years different. Both have that amateur Olympic pedigree. And you know what? Two guys that have both faced Fabio Wardley, both had success against Fabio Wardley, both had losses to Fabio Wardley. Arguably, Fraser Clark beat Fabio Wardley, but arguably Justis Huni has had the better performance against Fabio Wardley. So in this fight here, though, I think Fraser Clark's a good fighter, but what I saw against Jamie TKV, if that type of Fraser Clark turns up, it's Justis Huni for me by a mile. We haven't seen Justis Huni in a long time. I mean, it was that fight against Fabio Wardley the last time we saw Huni. Huni was supposed to compete in the back end of last year on that Jai Pattaya card. Some bad things happened for Justis Huni in the lead up. One of his friends and believed trainer passed away, an incident during training. So, you know, that, yeah, it was a big shame for Justis Huni. Condolences to him. And unfortunately that we didn't get to see him take on Kiki Toa-Latelli in a rematch. So yeah, this will be the first time we see him following the loss to Fabio Wardley and that, you know, devastating thing that happened to him in his personal life. So we'll have to wait and see what we see from Justis Huni. But for me, early, I think I will be doing a proper preview to these. But for me, Justis Huni at the moment beats Fraser Clark. Jamie TKV versus Richard Riakporhe. That's an interesting fight. I think Richard Riakporhe should win it, but there's no guarantees. I thought Fraser Clark should beat Jamie TKV, and he didn't. So you'll have to wait and see. Conor Benn and Regis Prograis, Tyson Fury and Arslanbek Makhmudov. We are going to try and do a proper preview, so I'm not going to give you my prediction yet. You'll have to wait until later in the week for that. But I think these two fights, Regis Prograis versus Conor Benn, will be chaos, in my opinion. I think it'll be a brilliant fight. It'll be fight of the night, in my opinion, by a mile. It'll be two guys with absolutely no regard for defense. You know what? To be honest, they really can't defend anyway, so have no regard for it. It'll be two guys going hammer and tong for it to see who can land the biggest shot. And Regis Prograis, for me, has the better resume over Conor Benn. He does. He's the on paper better fighter. He is the guy that has been a world champion. Conor Benn, his best win has been at middleweight against a, questionable Chris Eubank Jr., a weight-drained Chris Eubank Jr. So for Conor Benn, dropping back down this weight, Regis Prograis stepping up in weight, it's an interesting fight. It's a very interesting fight. And like I said, I'll give my prediction later in the week. We'll talk about it more, but I think for me, that'll be fight of the night. And Tyson Fury versus Arslanbek Makhmudov. I said it about this a few weeks ago, my thoughts on Tyson Fury versus Makhmudov. Tyson Fury should beat Makhmudov. Tyson Fury is up against a guy that just beat Dave Allen, a guy that got destroyed against Ajit Kabayel. Tyson Fury should be beating Makhmudov, but there's no guarantees in this sport. Makhmudov hits very, very hard, and for those opening rounds, a shot can more than definitely land, and how Tyson Fury eats it, we'll have to wait and see. For me, Tyson Fury's always had a relatively good chin. He is a very hard man to stop. Even if you hit him flush and he goes down, he still finds a way to get up, and Usyk landed his best shot on him and he couldn't put him away. So Tyson Fury's a hard man to stop. But there is no guarantees in this sport. There is not one guarantee. And Tyson Fury, we haven't seen him in a long time. He's been in and out of retirement, getting up there in age again. Like, people, I think, are saying Tyson Fury wins this fight before he's won it, and they're planning his next fight before he's won it. And sometimes that's a very dangerous game, because sometimes you get in your own head as the fighter saying, well, I've already won this fight before I've done it. And that, for me, can sometimes spell the recipe for disaster. And look, I would agree with the sentiment that Tyson Fury should win this. Don't get me wrong. Tyson Fury is an 80-20 favorite in my opinion, but you've got to be careful of that 20%, man. That's my main point here. You've got to be careful of that 20%, because it's never, ever a guarantee. All right, guys, that wraps up this video. Let me know in the comments, like I said, what you guys thought of this longer style video. Doing a weekend roundup, looking ahead at the next weekend's action, doing the breaking news. If you like it, let me know in the comments. If you prefer the shorter style videos, let me know in the comments. Like I said, I'm always open for things. We're trying to hit 1K. Guys, let us hit 1K. All right, next few months, I want to see that 1K. Obviously, for me, Not only does it look good for the channel, it's something that I'm working at, but also that 1K also hits the threshold where I can start monetizing the videos. And I know it's not all about monetization, but look, it does help. It increases the quality of these videos, it increases the time I can commit to these videos. And, you know, it's free for you guys to subscribe. So it would help me a lot if you subscribe. If you liked the video, let me know your thoughts in the comments below about not only this video, but what you thought of some of the things that we talked about today, whether it's the women's fights, whether it's the men's fight, whether it's last weekend's action, whether you have an opinion on Zuffa boxing that's different to mine. Everything that we spoke about today, let me know in the comments below. Do I have anything else that we need to talk about today? I don't think so. I think we've covered just about all of it. We've got some exciting fights coming up in the next few weeks that we're going to be covering, making reactions to, making previews to. So make sure you are subscribed. Make sure you're checking out all of the content because, look, I'm trying to pump it out for you guys. I made a really in-depth video the other day for Sebastian Fedor and Keith Thurman looking at that fight. You know, there was film study. There was everything else included on it. So I'm going to try and make more of those for the bigger fights, the tougher 50-50 type fights. So I want you guys to check those out and let me know what you guys think of the comments as well. Some lots and lots of fights coming up, and I'm very excited for it. I'm very excited for it. Is there a fight that I'm particularly looking forward to in the next few months? I mean, there's some that intrigue me. There's some that I want to see announced, but I don't think there's a better fight lined up for me than, you know, it's between Junto and Naoya Inoue, although my interest has dropped a little bit following that Sebastian Hernandez fight. That Xander Zayas versus Jerome Butenis fight, that one for me is, that one's the one that I've got my eye on. I'm also hearing Sebastian Fundora versus Virgil Ortiz. You know, there's contract talks there in place to be on the Canelo fight later this year, so I want to see that one as well. But in terms of made fights, I think Xander Zayas versus Jerome Butenis is the one that's most intriguing me in terms of this weekend. I'm there watching Justice Huni because he's my Australian brother, but Conor Benn versus Regis Progress for me will be the fight of the night. Guys, let me know in the comments what you guys think of this video. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. I'm out of here, guys. See ya!